Okay, Richard Smith, Calibre Home Inspections, inspecting homes and protecting dreams. Just here Wednesday morning, 8:35, 8:36, and wanted to see if there are any questions out there. Hey, Alexis, did
Hey
you
there.
did you have any questions come up this week?
No, honestly, I couldn't get a whole lot of people on the phone, but when I did, they were all really happy. Once again, they're all really happy about the inspection.
No,
They
good.
think you guys are super thorough. Um, of course, we tell them about the Wednesday morning Q&A, but I'm sure a lot of people will jump on when they have questions after they get moved into their home. Because, looking and
Yeah,
living in the home is completely different.
yes, yeah. I heard once on Clark Howard that some guy said that the shower the shower leaked when he got in there to take a shower. He ran the water, and then when he stepped on the shower pan, it created a little gap and it started leaking. And he said there's no evidence of it. Said that it
Yeah.
just leaks. And Clark Howard answered him in a really funny way. He said, "Wait a minute, you're telling me your he was complaining about the home inspector, and Clark Howard says, you're telling me your home inspector didn't take a shower in your shower?"
That's the best way to respond. That's the best
Yeah, I
way
know.
you could have responded to that.
I know. Well, we have had some people doing radons lately, and I figured in the winter, maybe houses are closed up tight. We'll talk about radon
Oh,
today.
that's a great topic. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, someone else jumps in. Maybe we'll continue or we'll answer the questions that they have. But radon is radioactive gas that comes from decaying uranium. And that is pretty much all over. It's comes from the uranium rock that's down in the ground, and it just comes up at the path of least resistance, usually rocky soil. Some sandy soil, but there's a lot of areas that it can move in sandy soils. So in sandy soils like Florida and Texas, usually don't have high concentrations of radon in a house just because it comes up so freely everywhere else. I had some notes here. A lot of people think it's from granite, and they worry about living by Stone Mountain because of the granite. And yes, there is uranium rock in some granite, not always. And we've tested around Stone Mountain also, and it just doesn't seem to be unusually elevated there than anywhere else. There are some areas that are elevated more than everywhere else, and that is, oh, probably near the Chateau Lawn area, behind Chateau Lawn, the Deep Creek, then kind of heading back that way towards Flowery Branch.
That
All
just
those,
goes to show that whether you're near a lake or a rock, like a mountain, you don't know, and it's safe to get it tested either way.
right. Now, mountainous areas, yeah, they might have more uranium or might have more crevices that the uranium gas comes up, but yeah, they're kind of, you'll see where the high concentrations, if you look at the national map, you'll see the high concentrations be in mountainous rocky areas. So it might have more uranium rock. Um, we've noticed that it's a little elevated near lakes. Our highest, our highest reading was our highest reading was away from the lake. The next two were at Lake Lanier, Lake Holmes, and you may be able to figure out why once we explain how radon gets into the house and why it just doesn't go around the house and come up in the ground. But older homes are not as tight. They're not they're not as weather tight. They're drafty old houses. The radon gas can get out, it can move in, it can move out. It moves. The newer construction, believe it or not, is more likely to have the radon. And I'll explain how it gets in. A lot of people think that it's only on a basement house that you get it. Now, what happens, let's just say we have a house wrapped and it's caulked up real tight and it's sealed up and it's a two-story house on a slab. If you ever notice on a two-story house, you have the AC on and it's on just the same upstairs and downstairs. It always seems warmer upstairs. Well, heat rises and the cold air drops. So the cold air is on its way downstairs and the hot air's on its way upstairs. And it's always a little bit warmer upstairs. And what happens, that hot air rises and it pushes up against the ceiling. And that ceiling does have little cracks in it, has light fixtures, it has air ducts, it has windows upstairs, and it just pushes, it finds ways to get out. So it gets out. Your house is closed up and it's real tight, but some air gets out. Once that air gets out, it creates a suction downstairs and it wants to pull air in the windows, but they're good windows and the house is wrapped up tight. So it pulls and creates a vacuum in the house because some of the air got out, the ceiling on the top floor. So it pulls through the cracks on the slab house. Every concrete, you'll talk to a concrete guy and they'll say there's two types of concrete that is cracked or concrete that's going to crack. It just does. It's you get the little spider cracks, and then when you have a slab wall and a slab, they shrink when they dry and they pull away from each other, create natural cracks. So it's once that radon or the heat gets out of the house on the top floor, it pulls in the radon gases through the concrete on the bottom floor. And that's a slab house. So it pulls it in through a slab house. A lot of people say that the radon is really high in basement houses. Well, you've got more concrete, and basement houses are often 2 stories. Sometimes they try to finish an attic, and then you have the 3 stories, and the heat's really rising, and it's just going right on up. And it pulls it up. So if you have a 2-story condo on a slab, it's still pulling up that whole chimney effect through the 3 stories. A regular 2-story house with a basement is probably newer is probably the most likely area that you would have radon come in. It's the best candidate for sucking radon into your house. I had heard of a guy who had a high reading on radon, and he said, "Oh, wait a minute, let me fix it and come back and test." So okay, so he opened up all the windows. He let all the radon out. That's okay. It doesn't matter. It won't hurt the test as long as the test is done properly. And then he went down in the basement. He found all the cracks and all the areas around the foundation wall and the slab. And that is a natural crack. And he sealed that up. He sealed the plumbing penetrations. He sealed everything. And they went back and tested. And sure enough, it was within acceptable measures. When you test, you need to test with regular living conditions. That's either the heat on or the AC on, depending on the season, because you're not going to have your windows open all the time. Some people do. They probably don't have a radon problem, but they're also very cold in the winter and very humid and hot in the summer. Uh, some people try to scam the test. Now on a third party radon test, our machines are there to measure the barometric pressure if someone leaves windows open, doors open. It measures the humidity, it measures the temperature, it measures um, movement. So they're really kind of tamper proof. That's what those machines do, and that's why they're so expensive. And then that's where the cost is. You could go to, if you want to check the radon in your house, you can call us. We can check your radon, but it's not necessary. You're going to follow the directions and make sure you don't have radon in the house. So you're going to get a test from the big box store, Lowe's or Home Depot, or even a hardware store, or you can call the labs. They'll send you some charcoal, and that's carbon dating, and it's radioactive absorption is what carbon does. You open it up, you wait 2 days, you close it up, normal living conditions, you follow directions. It's got to be away from windows, stairwells, return ducts, heat sources, a number of things. So you set this radon up, and you follow the directions, and you document exactly what you do, because there's half life ratings in radioactivity, and you close up that canister and you send it to the lab, and then they'll read it, and that's the most accurate way to do it. That's real radioactive carbon uh, dating. The machines are often quite on target. I've tested them both together, and they are about the same. I've also tested, it was an interesting test when I was using the carbon. I tested a basement house. One test was done in the basement, the other one was done on the main floor. I did that about 10 or 12 times. I really wanted to see a correlation. If the radon gets into the house, is it always concentrated higher in the basement than it is on the main floor where you're living, or even upstairs in a second floor bedroom area? But I didn't do that. I just did the main floor and the basement. And I found it was really interesting. The basement is always higher than the rest of the house. But wait, once it gets in, the difference between the basement and the rest of the house is really negligible. Because if it's 4.0 in the basement, it's probably 4.1 or 4.2. No, 4.2 in the basement is probably 4.0 in the main floor. So if you have a 6 reading in the basement, you're going to be 5.8 or 5.7 in on the main floor. So once it gets in, those particles just bounce around the house and they stay in. Well, the house is wrapped real tight, so they're going to stay in. And there are, you could do that radon test. That's probably the most inexpensive way to do your radon test, is with carbon test from the box store. Or you can go online, just get on the web, type in, there are radon machines that you can buy yourself. They're not tamper proof, but you're the one living there, so you're going to be testing your own stuff and you follow your own directions. And it's something like the size of a smoke detector, and you plug it in and you set it, and it'll come back with a reading in 2 days and tell you what it is. And it does take an average. And I've tested those along with the big equipment, and I found those to be very accurate also. So I was really pleased with those. And I'd recommend anybody that's interested in radon in their home, or not having radon in your home, that you get one of these tests. I used to use a PS2. I think the next generation is PS3 or PS4 now. The good thing about those, it's a great investment. It's about the cost of having me come out and do the radon test, or even less. But the good thing about those is you can you can test it yourself and see the results, and unplug it and give it to your friends, relatives, give it to your parents, check your parents' house out, give it to coworkers, bring it back, test your house again. You can, it's just infinite number of tests. So it's it's a great it's a great thing to have. And let relatives borrow it and check their own out for free. The test is good. You can do a long-term test or a short-term test. A short-term is 2 days. Long-term is really as long as you want. Sometimes they have month-long tests, and it varies. It changes. If you look at the graph from the electronic tests, it's interesting. It bounces up and down all day, the amount of radon, radioactive gas that gets in. You do want to get the radon out. I don't know if I forget if I mentioned this or not, but it is the second leading cause of lung cancer. I talked to, I think it was a government office that came in and were training us on radon early in my career as an inspector, and it's colorless, odorless, tasteless, and when you have cancer, they can't look at the cancer cell and say it was from radon. So I thought it might be a big hoax. So I asked them, how do you know if people move every 5 years and they get cancer, how do they know it's from radon that's giving you cancer? And they hummed and hawed up there, and they kicked sand, and they said, all right, well, we found in areas that have high levels of radon, that is in New England. Now, our high level around here is 4.0. And in New England, their high level is 25, 30, 45. It's just crazy, crazy high because of all the mountain range up there. And when people bought a house in New England, it was so expensive, they kept the house and they handed it down. They lived there forever. So people wouldn't move so much in New England. And they found whole communities with 12-year-olds getting lung cancer. And
Oh, that's
parents,
awful.
it's awful. It's awful. And they're trying to figure out, why are they getting lung cancer? Parents weren't smoking and they didn't hang around secondhand smoke. And boy, I've got a lot of stories about radon cancer from uh, personal houses I've tested. So, um, so they found out that they had high levels of radon. They found that out from a family that had cancer. The husband was working in a nuclear facility. I think this is the story. And you have to clean yourself from all the nuclear debris that's on your clothing, and you have suits and stuff, and you come home and you walk through these sensors as you walk out of the building, make sure you're not still bringing all that stuff out with you. And one day he walked in and the sensor went off. So he was bringing the radioactive
Mm.
gases from his clothes at home into the lab, into the energy uh, nuclear power plant.
That's not including what he's like breathing in.
Oh,
It's getting
breathing
into your
all the
skin,
time.
everything. Oh my
His
God.
family, yeah, it was awful. It was awful. So they started testing a lot of homes, especially people with cancer and people without cancer, and they just found a correlation between high levels of radioactive uranium gas and lung cancer. I said, okay, that's interesting. So I'm kind of believing it. I'm thinking, yeah, there's probably a correlation because they've tested all over the country and so forth. So I asked again, what about the level of 4.0 during a real estate transaction? Where does that come from? And they got a little uncomfortable with that answer too, and I would be uncomfortable with that myself. Um, they said areas with high levels of radon concentration, like New England, have found that if you put a radon mitigation machine, that's a pipe that sucks air from the bottom of your concrete, it pulls it through the house and blows it out your roof. If you put one of those mitigation machines in, that you're very likely to get it below 4.0. And they didn't want to hinder the real estate transaction too much. They just said, yeah, if you can get it down below 4.0. So they're finding up in New England, if they put a mitigation machine in and they can put a vacuum underneath the slab underneath the house, suck all that air out and blow it out, they can get it below 4.0. Do you find anything odd with that evaluation, Alexis? All right. It has nothing to do with your health. Surgeon General says it's really good to get that radon level below 2.0. So the average is around 1.3, and that's what it is outside. The average home is that. You're going to have some in the house. Uh, it is good to make sure it gets below 2.0 in all the mitigation systems you have. If you're doing a real estate transaction, you need to do it by a third party for negotiations. So call us. We'll do it. We just did one this week, and all we did was the radon test. Uh, we had um, it was 2.5, I think, and that's okay for a real estate transaction. But in our notes, we always say that the Surgeon General recommends that you get it below 2.0. The reason that you have a third party do the radon check for a real estate transaction is because of the tamper-proof systems. I've got a lot of stories, and well over time, but we talked about radon, and now you know the rest of the story. If any of you remember Paul Harvey. So, all right, Richard Smith, Calibre Home Inspections, inspecting homes, protecting dreams. Please call us if we can help. Check out our other videos and like us on Facebook. Great.
Please do. That would be great.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Bye.